Okay, thanks, Troy. Here I will provide a quick overview of those emerging technologies and discuss their relationships to the domain name systems. The first one that Troy mentioned is quantum computing. With quantum computing, core bits can represent both 0 and 1s at the same times. As a result, this allows quantum machines to perform certain calculations much faster. And now, this poses a potential threat to the crypto underlines DNSSEC and DNS over TLS, this kind of things. The BAW, such as DNSSEC and DNS over TLS, skew the DNS. But here's the sense, the quantum computers are probably decades away to break two-desk crypto. In the last years, the RSEC published a document to discuss the quantum computing, how the quantum computing impact the DNS ecosystems. And as the conclusion is that those quantum computers are probably decades away to break two-desk crypto. The RSEC is short for the Root Server System Advisory Committee, and the document is written by the RSEC caucus members. In the meantime, sometimes the post-quantum computers has been developed to scale systems against future quantum attacks. So before the quantum attacks become a real threat, the DNS community will need to switch over to those post-quantum for both signatures and key exchanges. Now, even though quantum computers are not immediately risk for the DNS right now, if we keep using the currently crypto as it is, it could threaten the DNS security down the road. So the key for the DNS is to transition to post-quantum crypto. This will make the DNS prevent possible quantum attacks in the future. The second one Troy mentioned is metaverse. Maybe Dr. Wang Wei is the expert of metaverse. The metaverse is like the virtual world where you can walk around and interact with things use VR technologies. And in the metaverse, you can meet up with people in the shared online spaces. I think, in my opinion, the metaverse could impact DNS in some ways, such as, first, it will put a lot of stress on DNS servers. This is because the metaverse needs fast access to the virtual spaces with low network latency, which means that more work for DNS servers. Second, the metaverse also creates opportunities for DNS, such as selling virtual goods could make money for people who manage domain names. This may become a damage for new types of web addresses to suit the metaverse. So in summary, while the metaverse could overload the DNS infrastructure, it may also become an opportunity and bring profit and open up new users for DNS to meet the needs of virtual spaces. The third one is AI. AI uses machine learning to simulate human intelligence. AI powers many internet systems, including DNS management platforms, such as threat detection. AI models can identify malicious DNS queries, as Kurt said. And the second one is vulnerability analysis. AI can be leveraged for the software vulnerability discovery and the misconfiguration discovery. The third one is traffic optimizations. AI could be used to optimize the DNS traffic load balances. In general, AI has provided a potential to improve the DNS system's availability and the security and efficiency. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, an interesting thing you've said is using AI for vulnerability, for finding vulnerabilities. Are there any existing works on this?
It's a really good question. In recent years, a set of papers has been accepted by top network conferences such as CCOM and SDIs. Many researchers leverage AI's algorithms to discover the misconfigurations existing in the real world, and the results show that it is a really good tool to discover the unknown misconfigurations. And if As anybody is interested, maybe find the paper in the CCOM and ASDI in recent years.
Okay, thank you. And moving on to our next speaker, we have the same guiding question as Karel's. So, what is the new applications and technologies that rely on DNS? Could you introduce some examples and their impact, please?
Okay. I'm very happy to be here. Actually, it's the first in-person event I participated in the past 3 years. So first of all, I need to apologize, to beg apology if my English go wrong, because I haven't spoken English for a long time. Actually, there's, from my personal point of view, there's not many new applications, but I'll tell you what I'm working on. I've been in DNS industry for like over 15 years. I've been working in Scenic for like over a decade, but now I was assigned to Guangzhou to in charge of a IoT platform, especially about the IoT identifier. It's not the identifier for servers. It's identifier for things, for like a bottle of water. So, so I noticed that. I mean, IoT is not a new thing, but actually it is still a booming industry in China, and there are like about 1,000 different standards for IoT identifiers. I mean, every vertical industry, they intend to create their own coding, their coding standard for naming the stuff they're in charge of. But basically, technically, there are all these standards, all this coding, they fall into two categories when it comes to the resolving. One is to mapping to convert the IoT identifier into DNS. They reverse just like JS1, they reverse their code and put the DNS as a postfix. Then they use the DNS resolving. Okay. The second part is they put a domain name in front of the identifier, like a handle or DOI. Okay. There is I mean, in China, there are a couple of organizations, they followed the DOI model. They created their own handle-like identifier. But when it comes to the resolving, there's no resolving. Basically, it's more like a HTTP query, right? So it also relies on the DNS. So from my personal point of view, there are many IoT identifier registration systems, but there's only one resolving system at the bottom layer. That's DNS. I'm sorry. And in China, there's also another very interesting application about IoT, about the thing identifier. That is, some of the customers, they leverage the IPv6 directly as the IoT identifier, because IoT is unique and accessible globally. So if they use their own identifier, there will be a problem when it comes to the cross-border access. Like I bought a bottle of I don't know what is chinjo in Japanese. What is the name of chinjo in Japanese? Sake or sake? Okay. I bought a bottle of sake from Japan, and there is an IoT identifier, obviously, but and a QR code. But I scan it, I can access it, because it is because it is a local standard in Japan, so I can read it in China. My China apps have no idea where's the interface, where it's supposed to get the information from. That's why some of our customers, and we encourage them to apply IPv6, the full length of IPv6, so 128 bits as a IoT identifier. Especially there's RFC, there's RFC to tell us how to convert the 48 MAC address into the interface ID, the 46-bit interface. And there's another RFC to tell us how to convert we call it a CGA, right? cryptography generator address to convert the key into the universe ID. And we are encouraging our customer to create their own ways to converting their existing IoT label into the IPv6 address, which is make it globally accessible. And we will help them to leverage the DNS, reverse DNS lookup to, to make it whose accuracy, but not for DNS, but for the IPv6 addresses, which means the IPv6 address will be used as IoT identifier. And also we can, the DNS will help us. The reverse DNS lookup will help us to provide more accurate information for the IoT things, to help the end customer to read the information and make it traceable. So that's what I'm doing. So I was assigned to Guangzhou to be in charge of this platform, the IoT platform. And that's why I came here yesterday by cruise, by boat. It's pretty close to Hong Kong, only 1.5 hours by cruise. So.
Okay, thank you. You said that you mentioned two important concepts of today's internet. One is IPv6 and one is the IoT. So do you think that the IoT will change fundamentally to the DNS, because it's sending a lot of queries and manufacturer-specific queries? What do you think is the impact of IoT over the DNS?
Okay. Unlike DNS and IP addresses, which was invented to connect the networks, internet is interconnected networks. So IP addresses and DNS domain name are supposed to accessible globally at the global scale. But IoT, for most of the scenarios of IoT, it is basically a local scenario. It's a vertical industry, or it is basically a local scenario. So the users, they have no motivation to make it accessible globally, right? So that's why for some of the IoT identifier standard, there's no concerns about prefix or postfix. They only concentrate, they only pay attention to how the label is supposed to be to reflect their management purpose, intention. But what we are doing is to help our customer to finally, when the goods or the things when it comes to another scenario, when some users from other industry want to access information, so what I'm supposed to be, right? So what we are trying to do is help them to put a postfix or what is prefix or postfix before or after the label. From my observation is, that's why I asked the Gentran yesterday, when exactly ICANN will publish the second round of new GTLD. So some of traditional IoT identifier management organization, they are not satisfied with using the second level domain name, but they want to have their own unique and identifiable top level domain, yeah, right, to replace their existing second level domain. To make their IoT identifier be traceable and to have a pretty remarkable identification. So that is, I think that is the industry requirement for the second round. One of the requirements for the second round, new GTLD.
Okay. You mentioned new GTLD. I'm not very sure, is .iot now available or not?
It's definitely not available. I personally, my team is waiting for the new second round because we have been, waiting for the IoT top TLD for a long time now.
So you're going to apply for that?
I probably would. I'd love to join the bid for the IoT. I think I'm not the only one. I think I'm not the only one who is interested in this name.
Okay, thank you. So our speakers have all shared their very inspiring insights over our guiding questions. So I suggest we take some time for questions right now before we move on to the discussion material. So does anybody have any questions for the comments of the speakers? Oh. Should I be responsible for?
Sorry, thank you. Michael Fleming for the record. I spoke yesterday on brand TLDs and new GTLDs, so I'm going to jump on what you just mentioned there. Why would it be limited to just .IoT, do you think, for applying for something that could be used as an identifier within IoT technology? Could it be other top-level domains as well? Do you think other, for example, perhaps brands could utilize what they're doing for a similar application of what you're thinking?
As I said, the IoT users or the IoT holders, they are using the HTTP query instead of DNS resolving to help the customers to find the information. But more and more label management management teams, they're not satisfied with this HTTP queries. They need their own identifiable prefix or postfix to show that they are authorized entities. They are authoritative entities to manage this kind of IoT identifiers. So I think that is one of the intention. Another is that there are many giant companies in China. They have their own standards. They're not satisfied with using the existing top-level domain, using the second-level domain like .cn or some other informations. I noticed that in the first round of new GTLD, I mean the Chinese market was not ready. There are only few companies have their own brand names like Baidu or ICBC, less than 10, I think. But the situation have changed. If there is second round new GTLD ready, I'm confident that dozens or hundreds of these giant companies will be eager to do that. And there's another motivation because some of the companies have already leveraged DNS as a technology, DNS technology, to build their own private domain to execute their management inside the scope. But also they want, in some other scenario, they want their applications could be accessible within the scope, also globally. So which means to transform their private domain, private name into a formal legal top-level domain under the ICANN. That's it.
Okay, any other questions?
Hi, Jean-François Quéral from the AIO Foundation, for the record. Last September, during ICANN 75, there was a presentation from the guys from Ethereum on their ENS. We were both attending. And I was just curious about, have they been able to create better arguments than they did during the presentation so far? Has there been any improvement that you feel is relevant enough? Because, as you were mentioning yesterday, they are basically lacking a lot in terms of policy. There's a lot of limitations in how the technology is applied, and I was wondering what's your opinion on the matter? Thank you.
I assume that's for me because I was in that room and asking those hard questions. So they've not really been back into that kind of environment since then. they did say they'd go away and think about some of these things, and I take them at their word that they're thinking about these things. But they're not the only namespace like this, right? So there are multiple proposals for different kinds of namespaces. Some blockchain-based, like that one, some not. Most of them, and I do, we try and embrace these people and bring them into the multi-stakeholder discussions, and like sort of let them experience the problems we've been facing over the last 25 years, and we've been trying to solve, and they've got all of that ahead of them. So there are real questions about public safety. What do you do? One of the questions that I posed in that meeting was, what are you going to do when law enforcement comes to you and says this specific name is doing something criminal, and that law enforcement agent is from a completely different jurisdiction to you, and maybe even a completely different legal system. It's like, what are your policies? And in most of these environments, when you start that discussion with them, there's a lot of umming and ahhing and going, well, yeah, we haven't quite solved that yet, but we will. And often the concept you get is, well, we can solve that with code. And I used to be a young engineer that thought you could solve everything with code. Not that long ago, but quite a while ago. And you can't, you need policies, etc. So I've not seen like any major documentation coming out showing what their policies are. I'm sure they're working on it. They're going to have to solve this problem if they want it to be more broadly accepted. And that's not just for them, that's for all of these. And of course, they're going to have to deal with the scaling issues and the many other issues that come with some of these alternative technologies, which, by the way, most of them still rely on the DNS because they're on the internet.
Anyone else? Okay, so I think we shall move on to the discussion questions. And for your record, these questions are for all of you to comment. It's not thrown to any specific person. So first question is the DNS still relevant to today's internet? I think people in this room will agree because it's our lifeline after all. We would like to dig in a little more. So in what areas specifically, actually in your own areas, how is the DNS still related to works that you're currently working on? Maybe Karel from a security perspective.
No, I can start. So I was thinking about this yesterday. What I'm going to talk about, and one of the things that I came back to or had to think about. I was at an American university last year, and they had this sticker on a door somewhere that said, IETF, we believe in rough consensus and running code, and then scratched through with a red marker and a very dirty word, no, just put it in DNS. And so, and that is still today's reality. A lot of things that, if you think about it, maybe should have a different place, but people want to get something done, and there's this existing platform that everything already knows how to work with it, and you can just add another text record and come up with your own schema of how you put something in a text record, and bang, it's in a globally distributed, extremely scalable, very fast database that anyone can access at basically any time from any device. And that's really, really powerful, and we've sort of abused that as well. We started putting our reputational data in the DNS, and we've gone a step further. We put reputational data about the DNS in DNS, of course, because why not? And actually, I think that's great. That's really good, and that shows that it's still super relevant, and it's a great way of leveraging. I mean, I love DNS. I'm kind of a DNS nerd, so it's just really really great to be able to do such things, and it, yeah, I don't see it going away. Like what John said, if you look at some of the alternatives that have come up, they have a lot of problems to solve still that DNS has solved many years ago, and so there's nothing that compares to this. If you look at it from a technological point of view, what you were talking about on the boat yesterday is that the fact that this has been around for so long and still basically works. There's nothing else on the internet that is anything remotely like this, and that is a testament to how well designed the protocol and the extensions are. And yes, it's getting more complicated, and this is a threat because, well, maybe not to the DNS itself, but new people come in and they don't understand the history that the protocol and the people managing the protocol and the policies around us have gone through. So they come up with new ideas, and then people say, yeah, maybe you should think about these things, and maybe you should think about it from a law enforcement perspective. Oh yeah, okay, scratch your head, let's go back to the drawing board. And in the meantime, the DNS system, with all its stakeholders, just the train keeps going and keeps moving forward, and that's really good.
Okay, so now that we're talking about security in the DNS, I think we shall need some background on the current risks or threats related to DNS, and I would like to invite my colleague Baojun here to give us a little background. What are the threats or risks associated with the DNS?
Okay, thanks, Troy. Here also I will provide a quick overview of DNS security and the DNS threats. A set of traditional DNS risks such as DDoS attacks, domain hijacking, man-in-the-middle attacks, and the DNS software vulnerabilities. And in the recent years, a series of emerging DNS risks are also proposed. The first one, such as namespace collisions. Specifically, when new DNS TLDs are introduced, there's a risk of namespace collisions with existing domain names extensions or internal namespace. This can lead to DNS errors and leaks of private information. The second one, it is also a hot topic in recent years. It is centralization concerns of DNS ecosystem. Currently, the DNS today depends on networks of servers and providers, including large provider DNS services such as Google and Cloudflare. Despite the fact that it provides convenience for internet users, they also introduce security risks of centralization that a few large providers for DNS resolutions. The second one is governance changes. The DNS governance introduced a set of policies and decision makers on topics like new domain name extensions, rights protections, and DNS security practices. Governance changes arises when stakeholders' interests, culture perspectives, and technologies do not align, but require cooperations. In summary, the DNS ecosystem today faces technical, operational, and policy-level risks that require continuous risk management. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, I think the two types of threats are especially related to our audiences. So the first is namespace collision, so watch out, new GTLD appliers. And the second is about DNS. Oops. All right. Hello? I must say something wrong. Hello? All right. All right, shouldn't blame on the new GTLDs. So okay, so the next thread you mentioned is DNS service centralization. As a matter of fact, in our pre-event webinar 2 weeks ago, we've invited Jan Schaumann from Akamai. He talked about his research over DNS centralization of A records and IPv6 records in naked domains, and find that there is really some centralization there. Some top cloud providers like Google Cloudflare are controlling like over 50% of traffic to these Apex domains, and that's really some shocking results. And so do come to the readout this afternoon, and I'll be illustrating the results more. All right, so back to our discussion. John, do you have any comments on as the role?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see if this one works. No.
I'll take Carol's. Carol's doesn't work either. What's going on with the microphones? Okay, there we go. This one's working. So various things. Name collisions is basically the result of that thing that we talk about, uniqueness. It's critical that we, this is my opinion, and I think many people's opinion in this ecosystem, that we, at all costs, preserve the uniqueness, so that when a user types something into a browser or uses an app or however they connect to the internet, so that they get where they're expecting to go. So name collisions is a major issue. It's not just about new gTLDs. As you were alluding to, there are many businesses that use their own namespaces. And if you look at the root server traffic, so the first place on the internet, we actually see that, right? We can see those queries, and what that often is either a network or a specific device type which has DNS embedded into the device badly, leaking those queries out into the public. So it's not just everything over the DNS and DNS over everything, but it's also DNS everywhere. So these issues are real. The centrality of the DNS issue is an interesting one because it's become more popular in recent years to talk about it. But there are, just like other things we talk about, like DNS abuse and other things, there are different definitions of what it means and what people are looking at. So we saw some ideas coming out of Europe, which was really about the centrality of the recursive resolvers and of the servers that people were using instead of their ISPs. And there was a lot of discussion about whether or not 2 or 3 major providers were providing a large percentage of the resolution within the European Union. We happen to have data and access to data, so we did a study on that, and it turned out that it wasn't quite as bad as people were saying. So it's very easy to get onto these things and say, it's bad, it's really happening. So it's great that people like Akamai are actually doing research and providing real data so we can actually see what is happening. And sometimes people convolute where hosting is happening as to where DNS, obviously if there's a lot of hosting happening somewhere, there'll be a lot of DNS there. Is that really DNS centralization or is that hosting centralization? So there's a lot of discussions to happen in that world. Things that we in my team are looking at the moment. We kind of did the everything over the DNS thing when we worked with some farming institutes in Latin America to track the movement of cattle using DNS records. So you can literally pretty much put everything over the DNS. But at the moment, we're also looking at things like the lack of error signaling within the DNS protocols. So that's one where we're writing, some of my staff are writing RFCs at the moment to try and improve error reporting, because when you talk about security, being able to actually detect what's going on is important, especially DNSSEC error reporting. So the beauty of the DNS is it can evolve and you can keep doing these things, and it's really important that the academic world, we also occasionally release academic papers into academic institutes, are focusing on actually bringing data into the discussions. So it's really good to see the people like Akamai who have been in the industry for a very long time, and also research institutes actually doing studies. And
love to read anything you guys bring out.
Yeah, I've seen it a lot of. Actually, I've noticed the theme of IDS 2022 was about service centralization, and we have multiple scholars presenting their results. But sometimes the results might be, some people say that it is a serious problem. Somebody say it's not. So I think we're just, it's for us to understand this problem. Okay, so Mr. Wang, do you have any comments in your area about DNS relevance to today's internet or to your specific area?
Okay. Hello. I just talked a lot about the IoT, right?
Yeah.
What I'm doing, or what I observed in another area is about the Web3, the digital asset, and the domain name. First of all, I want to thank Jiarong and all the ICANN team who built the multi-stakeholders in the past 30 years. I think DNS is a perfect balance between the semantic, meaning label, and the resolving engineering mechanism. And also, it is a perfect consensus and compromise between different stakeholders. I mean, I don't know what's the governance policy for the digital asset in other countries, but obviously in China and some other conservative governments, the digital assets cannot be traded freely. Okay, but globally, at the global scale, IP address and domain name may be the only outstanding two resources that could be traded legally. So some of our partners are trying to figure out a way to mapping the traditional domain name ecosystem and the digital asset ecosystem to make a digital asset have a domain name and to make it interoperable. And on the other hand, it means they could trade the domain name instead of trade the digital asset directly. Okay, or trade the IP address. And it is basically it's legal globally, I think. I mean, all governments support this IP address and the domain name trading. It may not, maybe it's not 100% support, but they accept it. So that is the amazing part of DNS and DNS. I mean, it's not a perfect utopia system, but it is a workable system and accepted by the different entity, different stakeholders in ICANN, in the ICANN multi-stakeholder model. For that, I need to thank ICANN again. And I think if there will be second round of new GTLD application, and I believe there will be some other, the new GTLD applicants will come from the Web3 industry or the digital asset industry. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So our last question is more close to reality, and so the question is, what are the opportunities if one wants to be or stay in the DNS industry? Excuse me. Yeah, it's part of, we kind of, our life actually depends on the DNS. Our work actually depends on the DNS. So the DNS has been there for like 40 years, and can we continue to rely on it? Can we continue to work over it? What are the future trends? So I would like to invite our speakers to discuss on that. First from the internet community, John, would you like to go first?
So I'm not going to talk about new rounds and
new TLDs, which is what you're expecting when you talk about. There are people managing DNS zone cuts or TLDs and at lower levels that are finding ways to use the DNS in new ways. You know, some of the TLDs from the last round are operating in different manners to the generic, we just sell domain names and you do what you want with them. You know, we have people like .bank who are focusing on the banking industry and security and are deploying DMARC across their zone so that everybody is using DMARC. So there are opportunities to use the namespace as a policy lever, because these are, you know, that's what namespaces are. They're all kind of equal. They're just strings and bits. But what defines them is often their various policies of how they get used. And we're seeing people, and having over the last years, use their policy leverage on their namespace to implement new and innovative things. And to try and push, a lot of this has been trying to push the security awareness within particular industries or particular industry spaces. We've also seen people indeed trying to attest to objects, for example in art, so where you're using the domain space to actually catalog and attest to art pieces. So there is opportunity to do new things and more interesting things where you need some form of ledger or some form of cataloging mechanism, you know, like DOA is, but without the resolution. You can actually do that in the DNS. And I'm seeing more and more people trying to think out the box about how they can use the DNS for different real-world purposes, and that's encouraging.
Okay, thank you. Next I would like to invite Karel. So in our private discussion yesterday, we've mentioned something, is that we both agree that DNS analysis is very important for solving security problems, but data analysis and data collection sometimes clashes with privacy, and especially recently, like policies and legislations like the GDPR, CCPA has come in, and some important data like WHOIS have been invalid as it's in practically in its entirety, and that's really a bad news for security analysis. So what is the future opportunities to use DNS for security analysis?
I think, yeah, no, yes, yes, no, yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it works. Okay. So I think there's still a lot of future opportunity there, as long as good echo going on here. It's pretty good. The voice of God. So no, I think there's a lot of opportunity still there, even though privacy regulations make things harder. Usually there are like carve-outs for security applications. It just means that you need to do. Usually you need to do a little bit more paperwork, a little bit more structure to it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I don't think it'll go away. It used to be on the internet, everything was unencrypted, and for some things that was great because you could look at everything, but for some things it's actually not great because security was not always there. And so it's generally, I believe it's generally a good thing to encrypt all the things And even if that may have maybe a short-term negative impact on some of the data collection, we'll work our way around there, I think. As long as you can show that what data you collect, you do actually meaningful research that can guide future policy making, then you show the value of collecting that, and you show the value of analyzing it. I think people will be able to say, yeah, okay, this is a good thing, and we should continue trying to provide the data and to work with the data. So that's good. There was one thing that I was thinking about what we were talking about here. One thing you mentioned about centralization. There is also sort of a political aspect to it. When you mentioned the whole EU thing, saying that, hey, there's only a couple of parties that do most of the resolving. What you forgot to mention, I think, was that none of those were European, and I think that's sort of what kept it. Yeah, okay, you didn't forget. Okay, so I'll mention it. The Europeans see that a lot of resolving is done by a very small number of parties. Okay, I guess they build a great product. But none of those parties are European, and that is sometimes what stresses governments out. And I think that's something that we should try to prevent as DNS people to not have the DNS become a political thing too much, because I think one of the wonders of it is that we have this truly global system that works in the same way everywhere. And if you look at the current geopolitical climate, there are a lot of countries that fundamentally do not agree with how other countries govern their country. And but we still have this one thing together where without namespace collisions, and it's probably much easier than we would like to break that. And we shouldn't do that, because what we have is something that's quite unique.
Okay, you talked about from the policy perspective. That reminds me of one thing, of the ongoing lawsuit between Quad 9 and in the European region. For those not familiar, I think it's a German court have asked Quad 9 to block certain domain names for users in the European region because of, I think it's trademark infringement or some reason. I'm not sure if the final decisions have been made, but the internet community, especially the DNS industry, I think has been paying attention to this event. So is this a worrying trend to you?
It's really easy to get around certain things like that. If you don't like how Quad 9 resolves your thing, then you go to Quad 8 or Quad 4 or Quad 13. And so that's not always. I mean, I get that some court says, look, in this country we think this is bad, and somebody should do something about it. Here's this party who's enabling this bad thing, and we want you to stop enabling it. But if the workaround is just to change a number in your computer from an 8 to a 9 and it still works, I don't think that's the right approach. So I think this is not the way to go.
Okay. Okay. So okay. Thank you. Next. Baojun, a little bit about for folks in the academia, what are the future research trends that are related to DNS?
Okay, thanks, Charlie. Actually, it is really an important and interesting question for me. In the past few years, many people ask me, the DNS protocol is too simple and too naive. Why do you choose DNS as your research direction? Yeah, it is really a hard question for me. But actually, I also, because I am a researcher, I also spend a lot of time to devote and spend a lot of time to study the DNS research. I found that in the past 5 years, especially in the academic I studied a series of top security conferences like the Big Four, such as Using Security, CCS, IEEE Security and Province, and NDSS. The above four conferences are regarded as the Big Four conferences in the security, network security. And I find that more than 20 papers are published at those conferences in the past 5 years. Besides, I also studied what those papers are researched. And finally, I found that about more than 20 papers can be grouped into 3 types. The first one is that researchers have devoted a lot of time to study the novel DNS cache poisoning attacks. Researchers discovered novel attack techniques that explore vulnerabilities in the DNS implementations, such as bind, unbind, and Microsoft DNS. This is the first type. And the second type is that many researchers also find the real-world threat in the DNS delegation, such as the dangling domain hijacking, especially the subdomain hijacking. And they find that in the top 1 million domain names, there's thousands of popular subdomains can be hijacked by the attacker. This is the second type. And the third type is more interesting, is that security researchers developed measurement techniques and designed the measurement platforms to understanding the DNS ecosystem in the real world, especially how the DNS traffic are manipulated by the real world adversary, such as VPN softwares and the national gratifier routes, this kind of things. Many researchers many people design the main platforms and understand the characteristics of those adversaries, and to examine the progresses of the DNS manipulation in the real world. In summary, over the last 5 years, we have seen the exciting advance in the DNS security research areas. And I believe that in the future, there's still a lot of great opportunities for the research on this area. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have talked a lot about the IoT identifier and digital asset identifier. I just want to remind everyone that what I'm talking about is what the market goes in China, at least in China. And there are many organizations in China that they trying to create their own identifier standard, and they provide the registration service just like ICANN. Because ICANN is so successful, I mean, ICANN created a successful governance model, as well as a business model, and ICANN makes a lot of money. So as a MPO, that's why many Chinese MPO try to make a lot of money, just like ICANN. But as I mentioned, they pay a lot of attention on how to create a label and provide the registration services, but they didn't they did a few work on the resolving, because they leave this work to the existing DNS or HTTP queries. Why? Because ICANN does not share money with the recursive service provider. If we think resolving service is so important and recursive service is so important, like Quad A, Quad 1, or EU, why ICANN have never shared a penny with these stakeholders? If there's no rewarding mechanism in the existing ICANN model, can we create a new rewarding mechanism for the recursive party? If I set up a recursive service in my home, okay, maybe the traffic is pretty small, but it's still valuable to the whole internet. One word, one internet. Can I get a penny from ICANN? If ICANN cannot afford it, or pay it, can we create a blockchain-based rewarding mechanism which give me an opportunity to make some money from it by providing valuable revolving service to the internet users? I mean, there are many blockchain-based DNS platform, ENS or BNS yesterday or some other NS. Okay, but what they do is transform. They move the authoritative part, the DNS registration function, to the blockchain. My personal point of view, what is more meaningful is to unite the recursive service provider to create a blockchain, to make them valuable, resolving service really valuable. So that is my team doing now. We're trying to writing a software to convert the recursive service into be a real miner or ledger keeper. I mean, the authoritative, no matter it's a root zone file or second level zone file, authoritative party, they publish that data, but the real ledger keeper is a recursive. So they should have an opportunity to get a reward from providing the valuable services. Can we convert the recursive server into a miner? So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to, doing some research on it, and hope I can get some kind of support from you guys. Thank you.
I'll give you $1 if you really need it. But the resolution services are often not seen as sort of an ends service to the users, right? They're a means to get there. But there are people running resolution services for some form of profit, right? So if you can devise a way to run a service and you can convince people to pay you for that, then it is a valuable service. And we're seeing that. We're seeing people that do pay for resolution services that are more secure than the standard.
Yeah. Usually you add a layer of security to it, but in DNS basically comes down to you not answer certain questions, or you change the answer to certain questions.
Like Quad 9.
Yeah, and then people are willing to pay for it.
Yeah. So there is a business model there. ICANN does bring in a lot of money, but we also spend a lot of it. So we're not as rich as people like to think. But I'll personally give you $1 if it will help you get better resolution.
All right. So as our time is running low, we're opening the final round of questions. Do we have any questions from our audiences? Please pass the mic, please.
I'll chip in too.
Hi, Peter Offord on the Outer CCTLD in Australia. One of the things Outer looking at the moment is the impacts of other services that enable organisations, usually small businesses, to establish a presence on the internet. So the argument goes, if I'm a small business, why can't I just create a Facebook page or create a business profile on Google and I'm done? Because most of the people trying to find me will type into their browser, electrician near Canberra or somewhere, and it'll come back and find me because my business is in Canberra and I put that into the profile. And so they haven't had to deal with any of the DNS to make that happen. If every business decided that was the way to go, then people will stop using DNS names potentially, and all the revenue models that we've just been talking about will perhaps be impacted. Is that a real threat? I guess that is the question part of that. Is there a genuine threat that businesses or individuals are not going to bother with an internet presence by getting a DNS name, associated hosting, mail hosting, web hosting, and so on, or they're just going to sign up with a Google business profile or Facebook profile or any other online presence because the search engine makes that very easy.
some businesses do that. Some of these, so if you're in the small retail business, platforms like Etsy and places like that allow you to do that kind of thing. What I've seen happen a lot, and I have a lot of friends that run small to medium enterprises, is yes, they may use that back end, but they still want something that's memorable about them. So what a lot of these services allow you to do is actually to register a domain name and just point that to these services. So they're still using something that is memorable for their business, but they're not necessarily running the back-end services. They're not going through the hassle of having to set up websites and all these portals. That is a threat or an opportunity, depending how you look at it, also to hosting and all the rest of the way. It's just a change in the way that people do their online content. And we've gone through that over the last 20, 30 years. And there is more of that, but there are also people still doing these businesses.
I think a big part of, if you get your own domain name, it becomes portable. If you're not happy anymore with, for example, Etsy, you point your thing to Shopify, and you run your thing there. And if you just take only the Facebook username or the Instagram username or whatever, then you can't move that around. You can't move that same namespace to some other provider. And having a domain name, gives you that flexibility. And a lot of people, especially on a smaller scale, start off with just the Facebook page or the Instagram page or whatever. But I think that almost everybody at some point when they grow, they say, yeah, okay, I think I need a domain name. And I don't see that going away anytime soon.
People are still buying domain names.
Okay, we have one question from remote. So this is an advanced discussion for me talking about DNS governance. How to make sure that no one is left behind, either stakeholders or like governments or CSOs or countries. John, would you like to take that?
So that's a really hard question that in ICANN, being an experiment in multi-stakeholderism, it was an experiment 25 years ago. I was there, we were trying to do things different. And it is a hard question, and all you can do is put resources into it, do the outreach, try and make it easier for people to participate. A lot of people think that to be involved in ICANN governance, you have to go to ICANN meetings. You don't. You can join remotely. There are lots of opportunities. If you're from particular sectors like the government, etc., there are funding mechanisms. And this is not just for ICANN, but also things like the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. It's a different kind of multi-stakeholder to ICANN. It's a little bit narrower, but they also put a lot of effort and mechanisms into trying to attract people who are not normally there. The hard thing is making people aware that you exist, that are not necessarily the same people you always have involved. For example, most governments are involved in the Government Advisory Committee. We have a lot of governments involved. Attracting governments, we still do work, we still go talk to them and say, please come get involved, it's important. We have a lot of people from the DNS industry, but somebody was talking the other day about the fact that we don't, on one of the panels, that we don't necessarily have enough of the hosting industry or the ISP industry. So you actually have to make a real effort to actually try and think outside of your box and find those people in the other environments that you may not normally reach out to. And it's not easy. A large portion of that money that my colleague would like a slice of is actually spent at ICANN on engagement. We have a lot of folks going out there trying to not just bring ICANN to other people, but to try and bring those people to ICANN? It is a very hard question, and one I think we struggle with every day.
Okay, thank you. I see we only have 5 minutes left. Maybe one quick question, please.
So my name is Jerome, if you've not met me yesterday. I'm co-hosting this event with HDRC. So kind of tied to the question that's raised, and John made a very good point. So it's trying to bring people to ICANN is a challenge, and that's why we want to bring ICANN and the discussions to you. This is the whole reason why we're having this forum. And it's a hard thing, because the people who touch the DNS, there are so many groups. There's the hosting providers, there are the ISPs, how do you bring them together? And that's why we're putting resources to organize these events. And like I mentioned, we're working towards having the forum be an annual event, and we'll go to a different Asia Pacific city every year, so that we can come closer to you. And stay in touch with us. Get in touch with me, get in touch with my team. We will make sure that we stay connected so we can keep in touch on the current issues, and we can discuss them in a very familiar setting, which is here in the Asia Pacific region amongst our own community. Then when we go to a more global setting, especially for us Asians, where we tend to be very shy culturally, then we also feel very challenged when it comes to the language. But if we practice doing this kind of discussion here, in a more familiar setting, when you go to a global setting, you know where your friends are, and you can practice your talking points, you can practice debating some points together. Then when you go to the global platform, like ICANN or IETF, for example, that's where you can really participate. And I think it's very clear a lot of these issues impact humanity. I'm not talking about the next round. So it's quite clear that some of the issues impact us directly. And that's where we can make an impact if we make a point to raise our voice there. But if we were to take the usual Asian way of doing things, which is, oh yeah, we just leave it to whoever else, then end up being price takers. Then we're not actually leveraging on the multi-stakeholder model of governance. So that's the whole point. And that's why I'm making a shout out here just to say that we want to keep in touch with you, we want to be able to keep the discussion going amongst our community, form a very strong network, and to do that, don't be shy, come and talk to me, or introduce you to my team as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see that time is really running low, so we have to just wrap up here. A short closing remark. Is there still a market for DNS? Absolutely yes. We have to agree that. And but there are emergent techs, there are challenges, there are changes, and there are also opportunities for people in different areas. And we must think out of the box and try to find them. And hopefully there will be future, another 40 years or another 80 years, 120 years for the DNS industry, and we're quite opportunistic about that. Okay, so thank you, and I think we shall close this panel discussion here. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time, and thank you for coming in. I'll see you soon.